don't pay the broker's commission, but because we won't allow that in underwriting, if the broker would be willing to take a promissory note in second position at closing for their commission, you can then pay them the day after closing, or you can make them payments over time. I personally love taking my commissions and payments over time. Don't give me 50 grand cash because Uncle Joe's going to tax me on 50 grand in cash today. I'd rather you give me $547.50 for the next 5 years or whatever that works out to be, so that I can sit down with my CPA and leverage my tax obligation over a timeline. And by doing that, I just took $50,000 off the closing statement that doesn't become part of the deal. The seller doesn't have to worry about it. The buyer doesn't have to worry about it. Making small tweaks like that can mean the difference between putting a deal together and not putting a deal together.
You're listening to the Gorilla State Investing Podcast. We're not here to bruise your bananas with guru sales pitches, overrated fluff, or any other kind of monkey business. We simply provide the ground-pounding truth about what it takes to be successful in real estate.
All right, today's guest is Tyler Sheff out of Key West, Florida. Tyler is an agent down in South Florida and owner of CashflowGuys.com, host of the Cashflow Guys podcast. Tyler was a prior military police, got out and did a couple of years in law enforcement before he got his real estate agent license. Immediately got into investing in some fix and flips. Luckily, prior to the crash, sold out all of his fix and flips. And then now Tyler is focusing on multifamily, smaller units, 2 to 10 units. And Tyler, are you focusing down in the South Florida area, or is it across the nation?
That's correct. I'm focused primarily right in Key West proper, in the city of Key West.
Key West proper. And why do you focus on Key West? Is it just because it's in your backyard?
No, believe it or not. I found there's a huge value add opportunity down here in Key West. So much so that we started an investment fund to even take it up a notch. Because obviously you're not, a duplex down here in Key West is not $150,000. It's a little more than that.
Yeah. What do units go for in the Key West area? Just so we kind of got an idea.
So you pick up 2 units will get you. You'll probably be around $500,000 to $600,000 for 2 units.
Oh, so roughly $250,000, $300,000 a unit. Right. Is that 2 bedroom, 2 bath? 1 bedroom, 1 bath?
That's 2 bedroom, 1 bath on average for that amount of money.
Yeah, that's pretty hot. So when you say there's a huge value add down there, what do you mean by that? So
there's this opportunity to get these properties. Back in 2011, they came out with what they call a transient license in the city of Key West. And if you have one of those licenses, and that's one of those things where that's one of the reasons I moved here, because it's a boots on the ground. Who do you know where you can buy one of these licenses? They don't issue them anymore. They issued them in 2011 and they don't issue them anymore. So if a property has one, or a property owner is willing to sell this license and you put it on your duplex, your rent would, let's say for a 2-bedroom duplex, it would bring in $5,000 a month. Okay. Maybe not that exciting, between $5,000 to $7,000, depending on where it is. But when the minute you have that transient license, now you can do it with short-term rental, your Airbnb, your Verbo model. And when that comes in, right now they're booking out at $400 a night.
Jesus. And
their vacancy is around 10%. So
short-term rentals.
Yeah. So out of a 30-day month, you do the math on that, you get 3 days vacant. And you're taking down anywhere from 2 on the low side to $400 a night. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to do the math to say, well, that works.
Now, is it seasonal, or is that around the calendar on that? So
usually it is seasonal in most, if you look at a 10-year span, I'm going to say, yes, it's seasonal. But what we've learned here with COVID is people have been cooped up. They've been tied in, locked home. They can't go anywhere. With COVID, these owners down here are slam full booked all the way through summer so far and into fall. But the season usually runs in the wintertime, and in the summertime, you get folks from overseas because that's their winter, right? Okay. Australia and places like that.
Do you get a lot of snowbirds go down there?
Tons of snowbirds.
That's like Snowbird Central. They flock down there.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're not locked down. We haven't been locked down during the whole COVID thing. For the most part, they did shut the keys down from March, basically March through June 1st. But after that, they opened it up and they removed the mask ban. Our governor was opening up the mask ban, not to go political or anything like that, but it became real easy to travel to Florida. So guess what happened? Everybody traveled to Florida. So that's been interesting and profitable.
Well, the entire state of Florida has just been on fire. Like Texas and Florida have now passed New York in population growth. And that New York and California held population growth the number 1 and 2 spot for, I mean, hell, since the country pretty much since the gold rush, I believe. I think California is at 40 million, Texas is at 27 or 29, and Florida's right behind them at 23. And that's got the entire state of Florida is just seeing massive migration. And people are going down there to stay too, especially retire, because it is a very good retirement state. So have you seen a population growth in Key West, like a supply and demand issue at all?
Well, there's a huge supply and demand problem right now because they're not issuing really any new building permits for the most part. What they figured out is there's only one road in and out of the Keys and one major airport, one international airport here in Key West. So the county decided that, when hurricanes come, it's a parking lot. If you don't get out early, you're not getting out. You have to wait it out. So what they've done is they've reduced the amount of building permits and then made it ever so difficult to even get a building permit. So much so that if you tear down a property, they may not let you rebuild on it unless you have enough land, enough green space. So they're doing this because they want to control the population in the Keys.
Yeah.
I definitely see why they're doing it. And I don't necessarily disagree with it. What is it doing? It's hyperinflating the property values. The property values are going through the roof. And Key West in the Florida Keys was an area that didn't really take hockey sticks and dips. It's gentle, slow, gradual. The housing crash happened in 2007, 8, depending on where you were. It was like a speed bump in the Florida Keys area, and it just kept slowly climbing. And there's still, believe it or not, so much opportunity. People are price sticker shocked in the Florida Keys. In the Florida Keys, you walk down the street and you go, "Wow, $1 million for that house." Now, if somebody from like yourself from California looks at that and go, "Well, that's average. That's like a 2-1 in South Central LA."
Yeah.
But the folks from the East Coast and from other parts of the country see that and they're automatically sticker shocked. So they just think that's expensive and don't dig in any further. But let me ask you, is it expensive if over a 10 or a 15-year period, you can lock in 10 to 15% annual appreciation by doing absolutely nothing but maintaining it?
No, that's not. I would invest in that all day.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was like, well, we need to get going down here because there's just too much opportunity.
So are you doing fix and flips down in Key West, or is that not an option because well, I guess you're not tearing it down to do a fix and flip, but are there a lot of older buildings because they won't allow you to build anymore?
Yes. Basically everything here was 1870s and later. And that's because they had a really bad fire on the island in the 1800s and burned everything to the ground. So you do have a lot of older buildings, a lot of old houses, really well built, built by millwrights and craftsmen off of ships, built with exotic hardwoods and stuff like that. That's why they're still here, Ramsey. Cool. They've survived these hurricanes without even a blip. The palm tree fell down in the front yard. That's all that happened. Nice. So yeah, we're doing a lot of fix and flips, but lighter stuff. I used to fix and flip years ago. I got into those heavy rehabs. We're not really getting into the heavy rehabs. If you're going to fall flat on your face, that's how you're going to do it, is getting into those massive rehab projects. We're doing more of cosmetic rehabs, repositioning, finding opportunity that's undervalued. And in some cases, honestly, it's re-landscaping it, marketing. That's what I do, is marketing. I'm a real estate agent. And then just putting it back on the market and watching it go poof.
So you told me that you were getting into smaller multifamily or into smaller multifamily, 2 to 10 units. Is that because that's what's available in Key West, or are there larger multifamily? Is there 100 unit plus apartment complex in Key West?
No.
Yeah. That's kind of what we run to in Panama City too, because I invest in Panama City Beach, and there's just not a lot of inventory of larger apartment complexes.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. If they're like, that's probably they're not allowed to build that many there because of that population control you were talking about.
Absolutely correct. But what's interesting is the margin wise, and when you're looking at price point. Let's say you're going to pick up a building for $3 million. You can do a 100-unit building in some markets for a couple $1 million. Now you have 100 tenants to control, 100 different moving parts, all these different things. And I'm not downplaying the importance of quantity of units, because obviously it lowers risk. But if you've got a 10 unit and you have market data that shows 10, 15, 20-year, 30-year consistent cycles, it's kind of hard to argue with. Yeah. Where there's no drop. It just slowly creeps up.
Yeah, I agree with you. So because you are an agent in a hot market, one of the reasons I reached out to you is because I want to talk about, like, what can a buyer do to set himself up to, like, in this market, like every deal that comes on the market's got 4 or 5 offers minimum, over asking, strong EMDs potentially going hard, like after title search, all this stuff that 7-8 years ago did not exist, right? At least in the Florida market. So what can a buyer do to set themselves up to actually win a bid on these properties, other than just paying the most money?
Here's the thing: what a lot of buyers don't realize is that the sellers don't necessarily. When you look at the scale of importance, more money is not as important as likelihood to close.
Okay.
Why is the seller selling a property? And if they have a broker, you ask yourself that question again: why are they hiring a broker? Because number one, they don't want to be bothered with the process, because they want to make sure that the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, because they hope that the broker has an expertise. So as a buyer, if you come in and you have you don't put much of an earnest money deposit down. I mean, I've sold 15, 20 unit buildings, 7-figure deals, and they actually put $1,000 earnest money with the offer. Well, what is that on a cash contract? Like that, you're trying to prove that you have the ability to close with $1,000 on a $2 million deal? That doesn't make sense.
Shit's weak.
Yeah, you have to send a very crystal clear message that A, you are qualified to buy, and B, that you are able to close and prove that beyond the shadow of a doubt. What I find very effective is to try to somehow get if there's 2 brokers involved or a broker representing the seller, try to get the parties that are decision makers on a phone call, on a Zoom call. Have that transparency so I can look you in the face and say, Ramsey, look, my client, they've been in this multifamily game for 35 years. I'm sending over a proof of funds issued by Bank of America, not Jimmy's hard money company. Bank of America, Bank of America, the big company. Yeah. And they have another one with Wells Fargo. And we've got $2 million that we're willing to put down on this property after we get through due diligence. Yeah, we'll put 50 grand down prior to due diligence, or 10 grand down, or whatever it works out to be. But we're serious and we intend to close. We just simply want to make sure that we can cross our T's, dot our I's, protect our investors. And once we get through that point, we're absolutely going to close. And by the way, we're so well qualified. If you don't mind, let me chime in Brian, our lender, on the phone, who can explain our qualification. Okay. Now the lender gets involved. And now, granted, these are rare, but finding a lender that will get on the phone and talk to the broker or the seller and say, Ramsey's a solid guy, U.S. Navy, he's E9, he's maxed out as far as he's the highest enlisted grade, guaranteed job. This guy's definitely qualified. He can buy anything he wants just with his Navy resume. Forget about his credit score. It doesn't matter. And if he doesn't pay, the U.S. Navy will ruin his life. So he's not a risk. This guy is going to close. I mean, he's a master chief. He runs the Navy. The captain step out of the way. Right? Walks on a ship, Mr. Seller. The captain step out of the way and bow as he walks by. That's how it goes. These are the guys that run the Navy. This guy is a qualified buyer. Now, the next buyer comes in and says, well, I got my Quicken pre-approval, and I'm wondering if you'd cover closing costs, and we'd like a 30-day inspection period, and all these different things that they think they want. And they're playing games with their own lenders over interest rate. Like one guy's half a point cheaper than the other guy. Well, all these things bring doubt to the seller. And if the seller has doubt, it's over with.
Yeah, I tell you, so something, a move that we just had to make in Panama City. We were playing that game where we were shopping for the best lender, like all the books say.
Sure.
whenever people would say submit your highest and best, we would submit the highest we thought we could go and still win the deal. And the phrase I came up was we were trying to invest in the market we knew, not the market that grew, right? The problem is that we were still focused on 2015 numbers, and it was 2020. 5 years has changed everything. So all of this new money is coming into that area, and they're looking at it with fresh eyes. They don't care what the market was they do, but they see growth, and they're like, well, I'm going to jump on this upward moving roller coaster at what it's worth today, where it was very hard for me to swallow. Man, these things are going for $75,000 a unit. I used to be able to get them for $50,000 a unit.
Right.
Well, you know what? You should have bought when they were $50,000 a unit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we did. But now, finally, I was talking to another broker, and he was kind of explaining to me why I was getting beat out on deals. He says the main reason is that everybody else that's outbidding you knows they're going to buy the property before they put in an offer. So the amount of EMD you put in is just consider it a deposit towards what you already know you're going to buy. So if you're gonna buy for $500,000, what's it matter if you put $100,000 EMD down to it? If you know the market well enough, you know your numbers well enough, you know your lending capability well enough, then what are you scared of by having a massive EMD laid down? And I said, it makes a lot of sense. If you put $5,000 EMD, you just look weak. Right.
Exactly.
And not only that, close sooner. Right. Or do what you got to do to win the bid. And we had a 10 unit come on the market. In my market, I know exactly what it should. It's a value add. It had some storm damage to it, but I knew this thing would trade for $75,000 a unit. We're getting it for $35,000 a unit. It needs $15,000 a unit in renovations. So we're in it for 50. We're going to be able to sell it for 75. Within 3 seconds, I said, let's put in an all cash offer, closing 7 days, no contingencies. Didn't need to see anything else. And guess what? We won the bid. We're taking some risk on it, but we'll be able to stabilize it, cash out. And it's right in your wheelhouse too, that 10 unit multifamily. And those are just some of the moves you got to make in today's market. I believe to win the bids, you don't want to be like the Wild West and just overpay for stuff. But if you do know your market, then you can make those quick decisions, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Is that similar to what you see is the necessity down in Key West?
Yeah, and actually nationwide. And I'll give you an example of that. Just had a listing where we had 35 offers come in on this listing. And it's about a $300,000 property, give or take. And I had all kinds of stuff come in across the board. You could go on for days talking about how ridiculous a lot of these offers were. And the interesting part was the seller did not choose the highest priced offer. They chose the most qualified buyer. What they looked at was, I have this lender that I use when I represent a buyer. Mine will drop his name. It's Brian Heckman from Heckman Mortgage. And he's in the Tampa market, but he does the whole state of Florida. I use him for my buyers because he always closes. He's an ethical guy. And what he does for us is he makes a video for the seller. Hey, Ramsey, I just want to let you know that this buyer, and he gets the buyer's permission first to disclose everything. So that's up front. He says, hey, Ramsey, this client has a 820 credit score. They've been in the U.S. Navy for 20 years. They own 3 homes, 2 of which are paid in full. Has 100% equity. He's got $225,000 in the bank. He's this, he's that. His debt to income ratio is like 10%. He's just solid gold. And then the next one comes in and it's like, this guy has a 700 credit score. He's 90% debt to income ratio. Yeah. So the seller in this case sat down and watched all these videos because we send them over to the seller and say, take a look. Seller listened to all these videos. And for the ones that were smart enough to qualify through Brian, and as a listing agent, I made that with the seller, and I sat down and said, hey, let's make this a requirement because then we know who we're dealing with. And the seller wound up picking the one that was the most qualified strictly on their ability to close. And he actually left equity on the table and took a lower offer because the buyer was more qualified. And what's interesting is the seller didn't say you have to use this mortgage company. Now, it'd be nice if the buyer did. That's good common courtesy. But we don't, at the end of the day, as the seller and the listing agent, we don't really care who you use for lending, provided they're qualified. We wanted to look at that, the reputation of that lender, use that as a decision-making factor that, yes, this guy's rock solid. And even if he chooses to use Quicken Loans, if the loan falls apart, it's not because of buyer quality. And we could, in the 11th hour, have the buyer switch lenders.
Yeah.
So much so that the seller came back and said, if you use Heckman Mortgage, I'll accept a less of an earnest money deposit because they're such an ethical company and I believe in them. The buyer wound up choosing their own company and wound up paying twice as much earnest money so they could use their own lender. It was an interesting phenomenon how that goes on, but imagine it from a seller perspective, right? This is absolutely, to your point, it's going to close no matter what. These guys are serious. When we buy the cash buyers out there, to your point, why put $5,000 in earnest money down on a even a $200,000 acquisition? If you're going to pay cash anyway, how about $5,000 earnest money up until the inspection period's over with? Keep that inspection period reasonable so that you can go in with good faith and do your due diligence and decide if you want to bail out or not. But then after that inspection period's over with, put 100% down on earnest money. I know a lot of your listeners probably choking on their speaker right now going, what? But I'm here to tell you 100%, and I've been in this business 20 years, 100% of the time that we go in with 100% earnest money after the inspection period, we win every single time, every time.
Yeah, because that removes all financing contingencies, which is really all that's left after the due diligence period's over with. The only so that deal I was telling you about in Panama City that we did the all cash offer, it was 7 days after title. So really, we did one walkthrough, and it's a storm damaged property. It's going to be as is. It's a cash. If you go try to get financing on a storm damaged property, it's just going to
waste your time.
The seller was like, "There's so much cash out there right now. I'm not even accepting any. Like, even if you got to go hard money, I'm not accepting. There's too much cash out there, and we're talking about a $350,000 price point. So it's not unachievable by your average investors to be able to pull together some money and get that for all cash.
Yeah, raise money is easy.
That phenomenon, that our highest and best, we might have been, we very well could have been $30,000 above the next offer. We might have been $1,000 above the next offer. I don't know. But what I do know is that we put our highest and best. Like, no kidding. We can close in 7 days. We don't need to inspect. None of us had ever done it before, but we took a chance and we close on Monday. So it's going to happen. And if our listeners out there thinking like, man, why are people buying all cash? Like, what's the benefit? Agility in decision-making, certainty that you can close. And then it's really not, if you can recycle that cash pretty quickly, because get the deal, get the deed in your name. And now you can go to a lender, a stabilized lender, and say, look, the deed is in my name. And from a lender's perspective, their time invested on you going in on a property for them to qualify you, they got other people that they got to qualify. Yes. But the moment that they see you own the property and you want to refinance out, now you got their attention. They're going to work because they know that they can close with you because you own the property. That's right. So if you've got people with enough cash to purchase these unique properties that are a little bit, maybe they're storm damage, maybe they've got some fire, whatever it is, a heavy lift. Call it a fix and flip if you want to, but it's just in the multifamily world, it's more of we call it value add. But purchase it and then get some stabilized income 6 months down the road after you've done the renovations. You can show the bank this property will perform. That's exactly what we're doing.
What I'm finding on the residential side of things a lot of times is that the seller gets confused and muddled by what's their net, right? And unfortunately, a lot of agents don't do a real good job of distilling that down. What does this mean? If I accept 500,000, what does 500,000 mean? I'm not getting a check for 500,000 at the closing table. I'm getting it minus my mortgage, minus the realtor fees, whatever. Believe it or not, realtor fees to a seller are a big consideration. Whether it be a commercial deal where there's just one broker involved, or a residential deal where there's a buyer's agent and a listing broker involved. One of the things that we've done that has been worked very well for us is we take our commission off the table. Here's the thing. In all markets, there are agents that don't want to work with a cooperating agent because they don't want to have to share the fee. I understand that concept. Don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand it. They've got a lot of expense in marketing. Put out marketing in a commercial building. I've done it. It's expensive. You're going to go beyond swiping a credit card to properly market a commercial building. It's a lot of money put out by the broker. And when they have to split their money, their profit with somebody who doesn't have that marketing expense, it becomes a little bit of a challenge, right? So how do we fix this? Well, we take the commission off the table. How do we do that? As a buyer, you go in your seller and say, my offer is 1.2 mil. I will cover the broker's commission, 100% of the broker's commission at 6%. It's calculated math. Because really what you're saying is your offer is 1.25 or whatever it works out to be, right? But emotionally to the seller's no longer getting nickel dime. Mr. Seller, we're going to cover the closing costs, provided that we close at our title agent or our closing attorney. Now we can control the cost as the buying side. We're going to cover your broker's fee, whatever that may be. Just send us over a copy of your listing agreement. We will compensate the broker directly so that doesn't have to come out of your pot. And we'll cover 100%. So really what I'm saying to you, Mr. Seller, is the only thing you're going to have to pay is your portion of the property taxes for this taxable year, and you get the rest. That's what our offer says. There's no nickel dime. In fact, it's a net offer.
It's like free shipping.
Yeah. How many sellers will jump on that? That's where I got the idea. eBay switched to a free shipping model years ago, and their sales went through the roof. Amazon does it with the Prime program. People pay money in advance to get free shipping all year long. People want net. They don't want all the garbage in between. They drives them crazy. Go to a car dealership. I'll give you 50 grand for a Lexus. Right. It turns out to be 64,500 by the time they're done.
Yeah.
People want that net. So when you can create that, so the next thing comes in is like, well, but the bank won't like that. The lender won't like that. Do we know that? Have we asked them? Because I beg to differ. Banks want to lend money. They make money lending money. They don't make money by really charging you a bounce check fee. They make money by lending money. It's the loan transactions that keep businesses, banks in business. So if you get a good commercial lender or residential lender, on the residential side, you talk to them and say, what can I do? Here are my ideas. Tell me what your underwriters will go for and not go for. And then for whatever thing they won't go for, help me come up with a legitimate ethical workaround that they will be okay with. You'd be surprised to find out there's a lot of lenders out there that'll sit down with you and go, don't pay the broker's commission, but because we won't allow that in underwriting, if the broker would be willing to take a promissory note in second position at closing for their commission, you can then pay them the day after closing, or you can make them payments over time. I personally love taking my commissions and payments over time. Don't give me 50 grand cash because Uncle Joe's going to tax me on 50 grand in cash today. I'd rather you give me $547.50 for the next 5 years or whatever that works out to be, so that I can sit down with my CPA and leverage my tax obligation over a timeline. And by doing that, I just took $50,000 off the closing statement that doesn't become part of the deal. The seller doesn't have to worry about it. The buyer doesn't have to worry about it. And the lender doesn't have to worry about it. So you see, making small tweaks like that can mean the difference between putting a deal together and not putting a deal together.
So now the buyer has a mortgage with the bank and then a note to the broker that they pay over a period of time.
That's correct.
And I guess as long as the math works where you got a reduced, because you're willing to pay the closing costs, you got a reduced amount for the property. Or even like for instance, on this one where we did our highest and best, if we did $350,000 versus $360,000, but $350,000, we pay all your closing costs, second mortgage to the broker. Well, at the end of the day, as long as the interest rate to that broker and the interest rate to the bank are roughly in the ballpark, it doesn't matter. It's the same as buying the property for the exact price. He pays the commissions, but you're still, really the buyer pays the commissions. The seller gets it taken out, but the buyer gave that, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
The buyer gave them the money for them to take it out. So, sure, we could say that the seller pays all the closing costs, which is true because it comes out of their bottom line. But at the end of the day, they got the money from the buyer.
So everybody forgets that. There's only one person in a transaction writing checks, and it's not the seller.
Yeah. That's a very interesting approach. I've never heard of that before. And I wonder, because my real estate agent in Panama City, he's a businessman. I mean, he's an investor as well. And he understands that if I get a bunch of cash right now, I got to figure out a way to employ it. So if you come to me with a way it's already employed and I'm getting a greater return, that might be something that he's interested in, because $50,000 a day is not worth $50,000 next year.
Right.
So, yeah, that's essentially building in cash flow for them to do their daily job. What interest rate do you think would be at an acceptable term to offer a mortgage or a broker?
I charge 6% interest, and here's why. I want the buyer, whoever's paying my fee, to do the math on 6%. What does 6% mean on 10 grand over 5 years? Not a lot of money.
Yeah.
So are we going to quibble over 4% versus 6% because bank rate's given 4%? I'm not bank rate. I'm Tyler Sheff.
Yeah.
And my fee is 6%, and it's based on what I feel inflation rate is. So I want to make sure that little piece of money outpaces inflation. Now, I can choose not to do it. We don't have to even talk about interest rate. I'll just take my money now, which means, buyer, you're going to write a check, unfortunately. And that's just the way it is. Or you can help me, let's team up, help me outpace inflation, help me reduce my tax liability, and I'll make sure you get this deal. Because I'm going to take me out of the deal.
Have you ever partnered with an investor where you rolled your agent fee into the investment in exchange for equity?
Absolutely.
Do agents like doing that? And if so, I'm guessing there has to be a pretty good relationship already established before you do something along those lines.
I'm out of the rat race, so I can only speak for me. I love doing that. I would do every deal that way if they would allow me to. Unfortunately, a lot of agents don't make a lot of money. The average real estate agent, I think, across the country makes $18,000 a year. That's crazy to me. That agent that makes 18 grand a year literally cannot afford to wait for the money. They got to have it tomorrow, or they're going to get kicked out of their house. Those agents that do a lot of business or have other streams of income, own investment property, I would think if they have a decent CPA and good logical sense, they'd be all over that. Unfortunately, this stuff like this doesn't get taught in real estate school. I learned it from another broker that has since passed several years ago. God rest his soul. And I've done it now for about a decade, and it's worked quite well for me. And more importantly, it's worked for my clients. So it's a home run for everybody.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that not all agents are investors, right? In fact, the preponderance are not investors.
1%.
Yeah. So the guys and gals that really do understand investing, those are the ones I want to work with, because creative stuff like this comes up and it's not within the normality of exchanges. They're like, oh, well, I can see the long haul in this. This benefits us both. And not only that, I imagine if you're an investor purchasing and you have purchasing properties, you have a broker who finds that this is a worthy thing for them, that broker is going to bring you deals all the time, because now it's like, I'm bringing you a deal that I can be part of. So I'm going to bring you the stuff that I like, because I'm not going to bring you trash I don't want to be part of.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
If a broker is willing to roll his or her equity into the property, then that means that they really believe in that property. If your broker knows that market and is an investor in that market, that's a good sign as an investor that you're making the right decision, in my opinion.
You're absolutely right. And you're right. And the most important thing is that the broker believes in it. It has to go beyond the sales transaction.
Yeah.
And the guy that is willing, or girl that's willing to put up their own money to guarantee that, like, I'm in second position, which means first lien bank's going to get paid. I'm swinging.
Yeah.
If you stop paying, I got to make good on the bank's note that's in front of me and then try to collect my money. So yeah, I have a vested interest in making sure this deal performs. And I think it's a real good accountability tool. But to your point, maybe 1% of the agents out there would do this. The other 99% would go run screaming for the hills. It's unfortunate, but it's reality.
So you as an agent, agent and investor, when you see deals come on the market that you really like, do you push them out to other investors first, or do you say, I would like to buy this? And do you have a pool of investors that you send deals to first? I know the word pocket listing so played out, but I know that you have guys that will close. You have guys that you will partner with, and then you probably have deals that are within your wheelhouse that you want to take down yourself. Kind of walk me through once a deal comes up or a listing comes up that you like, what your process is, so that an investor who's not a broker kind of understands how it works.
I have very specific criteria for me to take title to a property. that I'm just not willing to bend on. So very few of the properties that come on the market meet that criteria. So let's say out of 100% of the offer or the properties that come available, 5% of those meet my criteria. I'm going to make money off a transaction no matter what, whether I buy it and keep myself or I sell it to somebody else or I participate in the transaction or whatever. So part of that strategy I was telling you about, where I put my commission in to the mix and I help them buy the property, I become an investor in the property.
Yeah.
That model is one I predominantly love to do. So with that said, I have a core group of people that I will feed opportunity to. I will work both properties that are listed in the multiple listing service on the residential side of things. And I know a guy that knows a guy that knows a guy. So I'm going to work with the people I know will close, the people that are willing to follow through, and they'll let me be my best, right? Because if you let me do my job, I'll be highly effective. You know that, being a Navy chief, you let your guys do your job, do what they're supposed to do. You give them the tools to succeed. With proper leadership, they're going to succeed, right? If you got the right guy, they're going to succeed. So those are the people I'm going to gravitate to. If we've built some trust and rapport, I'm going to be able to do what I need to do to be successful. And here's the news flash. When I win, you're definitely going to win because I'm representing you. So what does that look like? Judgment call. For example, I have a client that's been a client of mine now for a decade. She's a rehabber. She knows I love the thrill of the hunt. When I find something that I know that isn't going to be a home run flip, I have her permission in the form of a power of attorney to buy it for her. She travels around the world. She's in the film industry. And I'll call her and say, hey, we got one. She has an escrow account set up with her attorney, and I've closed on her behalf. She's never even seen the property. I call her contractor and say, Bob, get over there and get rolling. We turn these things and she makes a killing. Are they every day? No, maybe 1, 2, or 3 a year. But we have that level of trust. So who do you think is going to get the call when one of those opportunities comes across the board? I'm not going to start again with somebody I just met. I'm going to go with her who's allowed me to do my job.
Yeah.
And here's the big benefit. She has proven to me beyond the shadow of a doubt that no matter what I do, I will always be compensated for it. She will never take advantage of my time, most important. That's my biggest commodity. And she'll be loyal, right? So I don't care if it's on the MLS and there's no broker commission. I sit down with the seller and say, Mr. Seller, my client, first of all, I want you to be clear that my client compensates me. Under no circumstances will you be responsible for my real estate commission. So I am the buyer for that perspective. I'm representing the buyer. You are not going to have to be nickel, dime, and death with real estate commission. If you have a broker or you're thinking of hiring one, feel free. That would be at your own expense. However, I won't be asking for a portion of that broker's commission. The other side of this, Ramsey, is that when it is listed by a broker, I go to that broker and say, we both know that we would be sharing the real estate commission of this transaction. I don't want a piece. So you may keep 100% of it. Even though I'm entitled to it, I want you to keep 100% of it. So I am essentially the buyer in this case. You keep 100% of your commission, Mr. Broker, and let's get this deal done. What do? They roll their sleeves up and we head to closing. It works.
I think they're going to choose you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. So what about a guy who's just getting started out, who wants to establish relationships with investor brokers or investor agents like yourself, who you don't have that trust built in? How do they approach you to establish that relationship?
Number one, they got to prove to me their ability to close. So everybody has different ways of doing that. One of them being that I would ask the broker, are there lenders that you prefer to work with that you think have a better reputation than others? Because I'd love to work with those lenders. Ask who they like. You call me and ask me that, I'm going to tell you, I like Frank Cotto at Lincoln Lending. Why? Because he's creative. He's also a hard money lender. He puts deals together when other people can't. I also love Brian Heckman at Heckman Mortgage. He's my primary go-to lender for residential stuff. Guy's a rock star. He qualifies the buyers and then with their permission calls me and tells me how qualified they are. That's a home run. Now, you go get me a Quicken loan pre-approval and I can't even get a mortgage loan officer on the phone. Doesn't make sense. So a smart buyer is going to say, hey, Brian, Tyler has a listing at 123 Anywhere Street. I would love to buy it. Can you qualify me? Brian will say, sure. And then Brian calls me and says, that Ramsey guy, rock star. Got an 820 credit score. He's amazing, blah, blah, blah. Now I've forgot about everybody else.
Yeah.
Because the guy I trust called me and said, he validated you. This guy's rock star. He's good to go. Navy, blah, blah, blah. So you now have my attention. And let's be honest, I love it when people take my advice. It's like,
yeah.
you know, if you're going to fight me the whole way, then we're going to have a tough time. And I'm very transparent with my sellers. I go, this Ramsey guy, I told him he should probably get pre-qualified or pre-approved with so-and-so mortgage. He didn't do that. He chose to use Quicken Mortgages, and it's up to you how you interpret that. But understand that there's a high likelihood that this guy won't close because his lender might be incompetent.
Yeah,
that's reality.
That is some good insight. I appreciate, because it makes perfect sense. You don't trust me. I don't know you. But if I can leverage somebody you do trust and win them over, and they have a reason to listen to me because I want to buy real estate. You offer loans. I need a loan. You do the due diligence on me. And if I pass the sniff test, you'll let Tyler know that I'm good to go and I'm qualified.
Another one,
where were you like 3 years ago?
Another one that people often overlook, and frankly, I did my first larger multifamily deal this way. I needed terms from the seller. I was new to commercial multifamily. Nobody would lend me any money in the commercial market because I was a new guy. I didn't really have a track record. I only had one property at the time, and it was a residential property. So lenders were like, go find somebody with experience and call me back. I don't really care what your credit score is. You're a newbie. So I read a book, and I don't remember which one it was, but I read a book that said, leverage a professional property manager. So I reached out and found a property management company that's been managing in that town since the 1940s. So when I reached out to a broker, I bragged, I'm doing this deal with such and such management company. They are my management company. I'm new, but they've got my back. I'm asking for the seller to take payments for their equity, which I know for the seller is concerning because first question is this new kid going to pay? Well, yes, I'm going to pay. You know why? Because the property management company is going to send you the mortgage check every month first.
Yeah.
That got me the deal.
Interesting.
And I've done it ever since.
I think people always make the assumption of creative financing means seller financing. So what I am learning is that everything's negotiable. Even with banks, they send you a term sheet. Well, those terms are for somebody they don't know, but they have other terms for somebody that they do know that are much better. So if you could just, all that any lender cares about is the risk on you defaulting on the loan. So if you can show them, or at least buy down that risk, that's what buys down the terms or makes the terms better for you, which is essentially why a hard money lender has higher interest rate, charges points up front, because they know that you're buying a risky asset. If the market crashes, they don't want to be left with this half finished project that they can't sell, and they're not construction people, they're lenders.
Nobody wants the pre-value at apartment building.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. This has been great. So one of the questions, we'll transition and start wrapping this thing up. So one of the questions that I ask everybody on the Real Estate Podcast is what really bruises your bananas in the real estate world? What I mean by that is what's the biggest lie being told in the real estate world to either, whether it's a new investor or just a current trend that you see? What would you say is the biggest amount of BS that you see in real estate right now? 5 words. This is a great investment. That's on every listing.
Amen.
Yeah.
It's 99% of the time an absolute lie, because great investments, great deals are not advertised. There's no such thing as an advertised great deal. It doesn't exist. You have to sit down and create it.
Okay. Well, so let me ask you this. Whenever it comes down to a listing agent posting a deal on the MLS, why is it that some listing agents will take capex or reserves and put it above the line whenever everybody underwrites it below the line because it's not exactly an expense, or vice versa? So and I know we're getting into the weeds about it, but this is a real question that I have. Whenever you go look at it, you go look at an NOI on the internet, it's all a bunch of bull.
Sure. It's
all a bunch of bull. And the way I underwrite things, I take whatever their gross rent that they claim, times it by 0.9 if it's a good market. So I get 90% occupancies, as high as I'm going to renovate or underwrite it at. Then I times it by 0.5, which is 50% expenses, and I divide that by the cap rate. And that's in general to see if I'm in the ballpark. But once you receive the offering memorandum, the OM on a lot of these apartment complexes, you actually look at some of the expenses and stuff. Well, they will put capex below the line so that it's not included in expense. And that increases the NOI, which means that the property is now evaluated at a different cap rate than it really should be.
Correct.
So what is your take on that? What's the difference in between? What's the disconnect there?
Marketing. Brokers
we all know it's bullcrap.
Well, no, you don't. Actually, I disagree. If you get 4 offers on the table as a broker, you get 4 offers on the table. 3 of those are from somebody who has no clue what they're doing. They just learned the word syndicator on Investopedia 2 weeks ago, and they found some attorney to charge them $50,000 for a PPM. And they're doing their best to represent their fellow doctors or whoever, high net worth individuals who have no prior training to even do this. Maybe they're matched with a CPA that helped them get their paperwork together. No disrespect to any of the professional folks out there, but they lack the experience. Brokers know that 75% of the offers that come in are not from experienced operators out of the gate. So they don't think they're going to get caught. That's the bottom line. They think that the average person is a newbie that's going to write an offer and they're going to pull the wool over your eyes. Also, they also know that those of you that are experienced are under a lot of pressure, especially if you're raising money, to place those funds within a certain amount of time. And if you don't place those funds, SEC says you're going to give that money back. It's a pain point. So brokers push on that, and they know that you guys are under gun, not you, but a lot of syndicators are under the gun, especially the relatively new ones. They're going to overlook that stuff and go, I'll make it cash flow later. I'll just skip the countertops and maybe get a cheaper dishwasher. We'll make it work. We'll figure it out. Oh my God, I got to get a deal. So they just overlook it. You clearly can do the math and you understand the business model. You understand the dynamics of how a deal is underwritten. But you understand you're one of the 1%. 99% don't have the skills that you do. They don't have that understanding. It's exasperating sometimes to see it happen. But unfortunately, most folks just don't catch it.
It's monkey business. That's what it
is. It absolutely is.
Which I think the entire world of marketing is monkey business, to be honest. Like that's if there's anything about me, the moment I feel like I'm being sold by somebody, like they try to send me some oh man, I want to throw up. I just hate it. Right. But like every time I'm pretty sure that every broker knows that a 50 unit apartment complex does not have 100% occupancy. There are turnovers that have happened. Somebody has moved out. It might be 100% occupied today, right? Because you decided to get 100% occupied to put it on the market. But somebody moved out for a couple of days, you had a turnover. So that's 99%. But every time, oh yeah, we're underwriting 100% occupancy. It's monkey business. It bruises my bananas. It bruises my bananas, Tyler. I don't like it.
30% expense ratio. You don't need property management. You can self-manage this. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, your time isn't valuable at all. See that, and for the guys out there listening, when you're doing your underwriting, and I'm not going to do a whole session on underwriting, but make sure you are accounting for, even if you do intend to self-manage, say it's a duplex or whatnot, all you're doing is exchanging your time for a rate that you could hire a property manager at. So that is expensive. If you ever move out of town, you're going to have to hire a property manager. When you go to sell, that next person's probably going to hire a property manager. So they're going to underwrite it based on that property management is an expense. So
yes.
if you remove that from your underwriting and say, I'm going to manage it, you probably will cash flow higher than anybody else who's willing to buy it. And that's exactly the truth. You're going to cash flow higher than anybody else is willing to buy it. So therefore, they're not going to be willing to buy it at the price you bought it for.
That's right.
And there's no such thing as 100% occupancy. Bull.
Amen. One little cheat for buyers out there. Here's a little test when you're underwriting a deal. If you have to decide whether or not you should include that in your analysis, I'm going to ask you to take that amount of money, let's say property management. I want you to write out a check for that amount of money and donate it to your local charity.
Yeah. That's your time. I mean, you can't, like you said, your time's your biggest commodity. And for guys just getting started out, like, I learned a lot when I was self-managing because I was local. I was living in Panama City. I was self-managing. I learned a lot. I only did it until I figured out how to do it. And then I said, I don't want to, I'm going to hire somebody else. It's 10%. It's 10% that I pay.
Yeah.
If it's a short-term rental, it's 20%.
Right.
So whatever, like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I hope these guys understand that on smaller properties, if you're under 20 doors, there's no such thing as a 5% property manager on small properties.
No.
Those are on 100 unit properties, not your duplex. There's no such anybody that will manage a duplex for 5% runs screaming from.
Yeah. I think 8 to 10% is what the average range.
Right.
I think I started out at 8%. Now I'm being charged 10%. But I mean, the market changes. It's cost of doing business. And luckily, whenever I purchased it, somebody had told me you better account for that as an expense because one day it will be when you don't want to do this crap anymore.
Amen.
And it didn't take me long until I wanted that arm's length distance between me and my tenants. Because I called them whenever I first started buying properties. I was buying, I don't want to say I was a slumlord, but I would buy properties that were slummy and turn them around. There for about a year while I was turning them around, I called them poverty problems. Like every time that I showed up at my place, and I was just there to renovate.
Right.
The people that knew I owned the place, it come up. You couldn't even say good morning to them without, oh, hey, the AC's got this, or hey, they always had a story, always had a problem. They were trying to make your problem. It wasn't until I got a property manager and I stopped telling people I was the owner. I was like, I'm just here as a contractor. I'm fixing the gutters. Right. You know what I mean? That helped out tremendously because a property manager don't care. It ain't their property. No, this is what you got to pay. This is when you got to pay it.
That owner's a jerk. I'll let him know what you said.
Yeah. I'll ask the owner. Man, it was a game changer.
There you go.
Not only that, I was doing renovations myself, which I appreciate that I did because now. And I was young, man. I had the speed. I was a whippersnapper. I could handle doing all that at the time. I was like in my mid-20s. But I remember doing drywall, and I was mudding in drywall. I was listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast when some guy was like, "Look, man, I bet there's some guy out there who's doing something that somebody else would do for $10 an hour, like mudding drywall or painting." He says, but they could be looking for the next deal. So they're trying to save $10 an hour when they probably got a job that pays $50 an hour. And I sat there, I said, this dude is talking to me right now. Because I would get off work at the Navy. I would go to my apartment complex, spend 4 or 5 hours renovating.
Yeah. Half
of my time was running back and forth to Home Depot because I didn't know how to buy everything at once. Make it work as I go. And that moment, I put down that dang spackle, whatever thing it was. And I went and I hired a guy off Craigslist who, no kidding, did drywall for $10 an hour. And he did all my drywall for $10 an hour. And
my dad.
Yeah, he'd go a lot quicker and a lot better. And I would going back to the apartment complex that I'm talking about, man, you can go from unit 1 to 7 and it's you can see unit 1, I didn't know what I was doing. Unit 2, I got a little better. And then finally I hired somebody there at the end.
But unit 7, you got polished plaster.
Oh yeah, man, looking good. That's the one I get the most rent from too.
A couple of years out, I said to my property manager, I called him one day and said, I know I pay you 10% and you still call me. So if I give you 15%, will you stop calling me? He says, yes. So I started paying him 15%. And then I started underwriting my deals at 15%. And then just leave me alone, man. I need to be out doing what makes me money. And it's
passive income, man.
Amen.
Yeah. Managing the manager is not something I want to do. I have a great property manager in Panama City, and it used to be, she thought she needed permission from me and everything. After a while, like you said, I just look, I'm empowering you to make decisions.
That's right.
Right. If it's a $5,000 decision, include me in it.
Pardon the pun, but it's your ship, right?
Yeah. If it's $200 and it's something has to get done, just make it happen and let me know about it. That's it.
Exactly.
And even if she makes a mistake and overpays for something, well, whatever, dude. Like as long as I'm cash flowing and I don't have to hear about it, I can focus on other stuff. That's money well spent. So don't
spend $300 worrying about $200.
Yeah. It was penny wise, but pound foolish.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, Tyler, I think we're going to wrap up the podcast, brother.
Alrighty, sir.
Going on like about an hour here. But before we go, how can people get a hold to you? Where can they find you? What can you do for them? And what
best way to reach me is cashflowguys.com. That's my website. I'd love it if you listen to my podcast. Any podcast player you can find, type in the word cash, the word flow, the word guys, and you will come up with me or Tyler Sheff. I'm all over social media. If you're looking to invest in the Key West market, you're looking to buy a property for yourself, second home, whatever, reach me through my website. I'd be happy to get on a consultation call, see how we can help you and go from there.
Do you have a network of people down there that if an out-of-state investor wanted to buy a short-term rental, they've got access to cleaners and managers and stuff like
The
that?
entire process, like we can set you up with an entire team that is a turnkey operation. I'm not selling turnkey properties because then I get into your profits, but we set you up with the property management team, all the ancillary services, the contractors, all of that. I have the whole network down here set up in Key West, so we're ready to roll.
Somebody can furnish the place too?
Absolutely. I have a team that comes in out of Charlotte that is an expert in that regard, and they will do the high-end furnishings. I mean, they'll look high-end. It's not going to cost high-end, but it looks high-end. Dial this thing in properly with a professional design, and let's get this thing cash flowing.
That's awesome, man. So Tyler at cashflowguys.com. Is that your email?
That's my email, tyler@cashflowguys.com, and you can just hit me through cashflowguys.com. And look forward to talking to you guys.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Ramsey.
Thanks for listening to the Gorilla State Investing Podcast, where we give you the ground-pounding truth about what it takes to be successful in real estate. Learn more at realfocus.org/Gorilla State Pod.